This hangout is live. Konnichiwa, bitches. Welcome to the NFC Deep Dive edition of the Ultimate Man's League podcast. I am your commissioner, as always, Doug Gardner, joined by Connor Hemian. How you doing, Connor?
Doing fantastic, Doug.
All right. So if you watched our extended, we'll say, podcast from the other day, you saw us go through the AFC in excruciating detail, followed by a pretty long mock draft. Just like last time, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the Facebook chat, which I am monitoring. You can totally answer that. We'll answer those in real time, or if it's about another team, when we get to that team, we'll be sure to answer all your questions.
Yeah, don't be shy. Throw out if you're like throwing out like 3 questions, throw out 3 more. It's cool.
Yeah.
Questions.
Like what's your favorite color? If you need a nice lasagna recipe, I got you. Whatever you need. So we're going to go ahead and go through. I posted the link to the Facebook chat to rlads.com to follow along with the depth charts. So we're going to go ahead and get started here in Dallas. Everyone likes the Dallas depth chart. Why don't you take us back?
I lost you, Doug.
What?
I just you completely blacked out on me. What'd you say?
Oh, could you hear me?
No.
Oh, well, anyway, go through the quarterbacks on Dallas.
For the quarterbacks, it's Dak Prescott. If he goes down, I'd be a little worried, a lot worried. But Cooper Rush is interesting, I guess. And they do have some rookies they're trying out, but I don't think they've been worried about the backup position in a couple of years now, and even though they should be. But Dak's there. I don't see any reason why he's going to go down. He seems pretty sturdy and capable, and I think he's going to have a bounce back year.
Yeah, he's also got a great offensive line in front of him to keep him clean.
Yeah,
that'll help a lot with that. Cooper Rush has looked okay in the preseason, but whatever. You're actually uniquely positioned to answer this next question. Who's the handcuffed Zeke?
I don't see why it's got to be Rod Smith. He fits in as a different kind of back, but at the same time, I think if Ezekiel Elliott were to go down, he kind of already did that a little bit. It was Alfred Morris predominantly, but Rod Smith was definitely getting used almost as much by the end of it. So I think Rod Smith has proven he's the capable, I've got you guy if Ezekiel Elliott will go down from last year's work.
Does he have any utility when Zeke's healthy, or only if he gets hurt or suspended or whatever?
I want to say yes, but I really feel like Ezekiel Elliott's going to be demanding the ball, not just that they want to give him the ball constantly. And with his apparent new skills in the pass catching ability, I think we're going to see a lot of Ezekiel Elliott this year. He's totally changed his workout routine. Has apparently come back like 3 times as jacked as he already was. So I think he's going to be looking to take the league by storm this year.
Yeah, Zeke was looking quite large when I saw him at training camp a couple weeks ago. He was he was looking great. His beard is gigantic. But Rod Smith was actually Zeke's backup in college as well. What's that?
I said he's doing the James Harden with the beard.
That's true, but like with the weird triangle afro thing going on too. I don't know what's up with that. But basically, if you're not Connor, you probably don't need to even think about drafting any of these guys. Rod Smith might have a little bit of utility during the bye weeks. Might start like a game for somebody while Zeke is healthy. But as long as that offensive line,
I'll probably get like 5 touches on a good week.
Yeah, like 2 catches, 3 carries, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is what it is. But the real thing to consider here on this Cowboys team are the pass catchers. So it's looking like Blake Jarwin. I don't know if anybody watched the preseason game, but Blake Jarwin made a really nice play. Stepped out at the 1, but he kind of caught a pass on the left side of the field and broke it up the sideline and lunged for the pylon and just made he just looked really athletic. I'm not sure that he'll be on the field all the time because Jeff Swaim is a significantly better blocker. Rico Gathers might not make the team. And then there's fourth round rookie Dalton Sturm, who I don't see having fantasy relevance in year one. What are your thoughts on the tight ends here?
I feel like whoever it's going to be will have value, but I have no idea who that's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, this might be if you really feel strongly about one of the guys, grab him late in the draft. I mean, you're going to be able to get these guys in like the late, like 15, 16, 17, 18th round. Like these guys are not going to go any higher than that. So whoever you want, if there's an injury, it would probably help to clarify some stuff. And injuries have been pretty bad in the preseason. So you never know.
Witten put up, like over 100 targets last season that are just completely gone from this offense. There's going to be a tight end that's getting, not over 100, but they're going to get a nice chunk of opportunity. It's just who is it?
Right. And not for kind of under the radar thing the Cowboys did in the offseason too was they had one of the best offensive lines in the league anyway. They went and spent a bunch of capital on it. They brought back Joe Looney, who's a really good utility offensive lineman. They signed Cameron Fleming, who started for the Patriots in the Super Bowl, to be their backup because apparently that's the kind of thing you can do. Marcus Martin, they signed away from Cleveland, who was drafted pretty high by the 49ers a few years ago. He's a guard/center kind of player. Unfortunately, Chaz Green's still on the team. So if there are some injuries on the offensive line, they can move some pieces around and be better off than they were last year when basically losing Tyron Smith for a few games just completely sunk them in those games.
Oh yeah.
At wide receiver, this is tough because there's a lot of guys and they all have different skill sets. Take us through some of these wide receivers, Connor.
Well, you've got their probably biggest addition circulated through the news with Alan Hearns signing with the Cowboys. He looks to be their number one, most likely. You got Cole Beasley, the little white guy in the slot. And then where it gets a little interesting is Michael Gallup seems to be galloping into tons of opportunity. But Terrence Williams is still there. He's got like a dinged ankle for like the 10th millionth time. But he's still technically there. I would really hate to see him clog up some of the lanes with the wide receivers. I kind of wish they just cut him, honestly, at this point. I mean, he has some value, but he's not really worth much to me. I'd rather just see Gallup get his shot. And, I've heard some good things about Tavon Austin. Every time he signs with a new team, it's the same crap, and nobody ever ends up utilizing him, or he just doesn't show up on game day. But they are apparently really thrilled with what he's been doing. So I guess he's somebody to look forward to. That's pretty much the major players, I think, out of these wide receivers.
Yeah, Lance Lenoir has been having a really good camp, but there's a lot of guys ahead of him on the depth chart. It's going to be a run-first offense anyway. To your point on Tavon Austin, he's here to return punts and like take a reverse like a couple times a year. He'll have his moments. He's a fantastic athlete, but I think he's here to return punts. Honestly,
I hope he was. I really do. I don't want to see him getting too much attention because he never done anything with it.
Yeah, he had a decent PPR season a couple years ago with the Rams, but other than that, he hasn't been much of a factor. Michael Gallup looked really good in training camp when I was there. He was lined up against an undrafted corner, Travarius Ward, who's probably not going to make the team. And he had this really great release where he just shook the dude and they kind of worked him to the outside, and then it was an in-breaking route. It's just this gorgeous route. He caught it in traffic. Looked really good. And then we saw in the preseason game on Wednesday or Thursday, whenever it was, where he caught that 30-yard touchdown from Dak. Looked really fast. Looked great. But later in the game, he dropped a pass, kind of like a comeback route. It was contested, but he kind of let the ball come to him instead of attacking it, and he ended up letting the defender kind of catch up and knock the ball away. So it's one of those things where it's like Des Bryant would have made that catch. So it's he's still a rookie, he's still raw, but things are definitely looking good for Mr. Gallup there, and he'll probably go like in our mock. He went like the 5th, 6th round. I think that's probably about right for him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so, Joe. You're calling it, I guess. Put it on the board. Joe apparently says Gallup will be the wide receiver and for the Cowboys. I don't know what that means necessarily. If he means he's going to be the guy starting, or
Joe, do you mean he's going to be the receiver you want to own on that team? Is that what you mean by that?
I was a little confused by that, but
he is going to be a Dallas wide receiver. That's for sure. I don't know about the Dallas wide receiver, but that's probably enough time on the Cowboys. Dan Bailey also, for what it's worth, is a kicker that you might want. So,
boys at work.
Hashtag boys at work. Moving on to the New York Football Giants. This is Nate's favorite team, but we will try not to hold that against him. At quarterback, they've got Eli Manning. You know the name, you know the game. But Kyle Lauletta, they drafted in the 4th round, and Davis Webb they had in the 3rd round last year. Any of those guys interesting to you for Dynasty, Connor, or is it kind of like, do you think the Giants quarterback of the future is not on the team now?
I know there's a lot of people raving about Lauletta, but I just feel like that's like sad Giant fans that kind of wish they picked a quarterback of the future at pick 2 instead of
They probably should have, by the way, for the record.
But I mean, I don't think he's not. I don't see he's going to be maybe a really nice backup for a couple of years, but I don't see him being the answer like some people are saying. I think that's more of just diehard fans hoping and praying that he's going to be. Because, I mean, basically what they did with that 2nd round pick is they're saying that they want to try to win within this, like, three-year window if they can even get Beckham to stay. And then they had to start all over again with Barkley as the piece. So, I mean, and with the Eagles right now, how good they are, and hopefully the Cowboys putting up a fight, I just don't see them even being the 3rd best. They're going to be like the 3rd best in the division. So it's kind of a waste to me, but that's not even fantasy relevant. But
as far as Eli goes, though, for Carlo, I don't know if he's watching or not, but the offensive line is improved. It's still not good, by the way. The right side of the line is horrible, but they do have a good tight end. They should have a good running game. Wide receiving core is pretty good. So Eli has everything pretty much in place for him to succeed. But I don't know how great he's going to be for fantasy. Saquon Barkley looked pretty good in preseason. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, he starts off his first runs over 30 yards. I mean, the guys. I mean, I think it's official. You can go ahead and lock it as this guy's going to be a stud, just like everybody thought with Ezekiel Elliott a couple years ago, and just like people thought with, I don't know, Bell maybe even. I don't even know if there's a more sure guy in these past couple of years than maybe Elliott. That's just a guarantee. I think he's going to be a stud. You know, he's going to go first in the Ultimate Man's League. I don't see how he wouldn't be. And it's just a lock. He's going to be great.
Steve asks, is Ingram a top 10 tight end with OBJ back in the lineup? And my answer is he's probably right around number 10 in terms of tight ends. I don't think he'll be as good as he was last year just because he's not going to get the target volume. Last year, Brandon Marshall, who was on the team, missed a lot of time. Obviously, Odell Beckham got hurt. Sterling Shepard missed a lot of time. Mm-hmm. They weren't really throwing the ball to their running backs. And Evan Ingram had a really great season. None of those things are true this year. So
I hate to say it, Steve, but there's no way he's going to do as well as he did last year. It was like watching an eclipse. Like it was like, wow, this just happened. It's not. I mean, for a first-year rookie, I don't think any rookie tight end has had the opportunity that he had with that season. I think he's going to be a very good player. I think he's probably going to regress down to the 15 range at tight end, depending on how he can do.
And injuries to other players and stuff.
More injuries happen, I guess, yeah. But, yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a regression, but not a terrible one.
So I guess, Steve, the short answer for me is probably not a top 10 tight end, but you're starting him every week anyway. It doesn't really matter. Welcome to the pod, Carlo. And Carl said he caught our comments on Eli just as he tuned in. So glad we went back there. Obviously, Odell Beckham is a star wide receiver here. Sterling Shepard, I believe, is available, and or is he on Ray's team? Did Ray keep him?
I think he's available.
Okay, so he's available. He could be a nice, wide receiver 3/4 for somebody. Nothing crazy there. Do we like any of these other guys, Cody Latimer, Russell Shepard, or are they just maybe bye week guys at best?
I mean, what Cody Latimer's just been burning us for years at this point. I don't think this is going to be the answer. I'm excited for Shepard because I feel like without having kind of the bullshit Brandon Marshall feed me kind of mentality. I mean, he didn't last long before he went down, but Shepard followed suit. I think Shepard. I remember when he was a rookie, people were like everybody thought he was going to be a fantastic wide receiver. I think he still can be. I think he could be a sneaky mid-round wide receiver to pick up, and he's going to get you, quite a few catches a game. I think.
Yeah, he's a talented guy. Spent a lot of time in Evan Ingram. None of these other guys are worth anything. Giants defense, meh. So moving on. I'll move on to the world champion Philadelphia Eagles. Carson Wentz is supposed to be healthy for week 1. Even if he's not, I think Adam's in a good spot. Are you drafting Nick Foles in any circumstance or no?
I would say I would play it by waiver if you have Jameis Winston and you see Nick Foles on the waiver claim, like that's a guarantee. That's maybe even if you drafted Winston and you either don't have another quarterback or you have one that's nowhere near the caliber of Winston, you could throw like an 18 rounder on Nick Foles just to have that guaranteed probably quarterback 1 numbers for a week. Here's a question for you though, Doug. If you're the Eagles and Carson Wentz can't play that week 1 and Nick Foles goes out and throws for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, do you bench him for Carson Wentz week 2 or do you let him roll? Is it an easy answer? Is it just Carson Wentz? Duh.
I'm not putting out Carson Wentz until he's 100% because I don't have to if I'm the Eagles, right? We have the best backup quarterback in the NFL in Nick Foles.
I'm saying when he is perfectly healthy.
Yeah, no, I don't care if winning them the Super Bowl didn't make that decision for them, then 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, against the Cardinals or whoever they're playing, it's not going to.
Well, yeah.
I don't think it's going to make that decision for them either. That said, it's kind of a shark move, and I mean I don't know how much upside it has, but throwing that 18th round pick at Nick Foles. Nick Foles is a free agent next year, and somebody's going to want him to be their starter. It is just Nick Foles, but it's something to think about if you're a quarterback needy team and you just need that sweet Nick Foles. Not sure it's the greatest move just because he seems to like awkwardly be kind of happy being the backup in Philly. So that's where Nate Sudfeld looked really inconsistent. So if a bunch of horrible stuff happens and he ends up on the field, you don't want any Eagles. Jay Ajayi, Darren Sproles, Corey Clement. Take us through these running backs.
I mean, I think you've got an adequate starting running back. I think Jay Ajayi will demand most of the carries, but I mean, Corey Clement, I think, has the opportunity to step into a bigger role if they let him. I don't know. I could see them not really giving Ajayi, all the. I feel like they could easily say, let's give you like 10 carries this week, and let's see what Clement can do. I mean, they have done that in the past too. And then, I mean, with Darren Sproles coming back, I'm interested to see if he's got anything left in the tank. I feel like he may be a very limited rolling player. I'm not sure of what to make of Sproles. Maybe what do you think about that? Do you think Sproles has more in him, or do you think he's going to be kind of like we're giving you this because you're, like we're letting you go out on a good note?
I mean, he's 34, coming off an ACL and a broken arm on the same play, which just sounds horrible. Corey Clement has, can catch some passes out of the backfield for them. I mean, there's no upside to draft Darren Sproles in the UML at all, right? I mean, the guy there's no upside with Darren Sproles. If you draft him, you're paying what he gives you. I could see him having like a couple of week run where, he ends up on someone's team via waivers, but Darren Sproles not super interesting. Corey Clement and Jay Ajayi, I think, will kind of handle most of the work. There's also Wendell Smallwood.
Can they cut Smallwood so that Clement can just have his role? Like seriously? Haven't we
then they have Janelle Pumphrey and Matt Jones. Is that my Matt Jones?
Oh, that's your Matt Jones.
That's my Matt Jones. The guy I took instead of David Johnson. That was a pretty good move.
Carlos trying to jump us to the wide receivers again. Apparently doesn't like when we get deep into.
Maybe we should just not talk about Zach Ertz now, just out of punishment. Let's go to the wide receivers here. Alshon Jeffrey, when healthy, he's a wide receiver too. He's a good player and should be, you know the name, you know the game on him. Nelson Aguilar was an interesting player last year after being pretty disappointing. Played really well throughout the season. It's a great slot option there.
After I drafted him and he was miserably bad, and then as soon as somebody else drafted him the next year, he was great again. It was great for me.
Yeah, that's how that works. You should know by now. Mike Wallace, though, but I mean, he's better than Torrey Smith, right? And Torrey Smith had a little bit of utility there last year. Mike Wallace is not only is he a better deep threat than Torrey Smith, but he does a lot of other stuff that Torrey Smith doesn't do. Like he can be used in the red zone. Remember, he had that 110 touchdown season. I mean, it was a few years ago now, back when he was in Miami. Mike Wallace is a better football player than Torrey Smith and should be. I don't know. If he's like your fourth receiver on your team, you're probably not in bad shape. Not exactly sure why Carlo is asking about Mike Wallace. Carlo, you should not draft Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace will never play on your team unless you trade all of your other receivers, and it would literally have to be all of them because maybe other than maybe Doxson, he's like they're all better than he is. The rest of these guys, Matt Collins is like a 6'5" speedy receiver. Don't see him having a whole lot of utility unless something happens to Jeffrey. Any thoughts on any of these other guys, Connor?
They do have a couple of really seasoned guys that I think could have good weeks or stand out here or there, which makes me nervous about Aguilar and Wallace because I feel like they may get some attention on a given week if they make the team. And that would be with Kamar Aiken and Marcus Wheaton. I think those guys could factor in and maybe get their moment in a couple weeks. But honestly, I think outside of those top three, maybe with one of those names we listed jumping in, I mean, it's those three guys, and with the tight ends they have and with their running game that can catch the ball, I don't see them really needing more than three wide receivers.
Carlos says he's drafting Mike Wallace. All right, put it on the board, guys. Sorry, Mike Wallace off the board. Carlos' first pick. Sorry, guys. That's a real blow. At tight end, Zach Ertz. I mean, first of all, he's owned. He's a top 3 tight end. He's fine. Dallas Goedert. What kind of draft utility do you think he has? Where do you draft a guy like that who's a backup tight end on his own team, but a really great player in college?
So upset that he went to the Eagles because I mean it was also right when the Dallas pick was happening and they jumped ahead. He may have been the Dallas Cowboy, which would have been fantastic. I think if Ertz isn't ready to go in week 1, we could see Goddard right out of the gate with a big game. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I mean, it's going to be Ertz's show if he's healthy. But I do think Goddard could be a guy who could get 3 or 4 touchdowns through the season just on random packages when they're in the red zone. I think he's that kind of player. And I'm excited for his future. I think being on the Eagles, it's going to be kind of a dynasty appeal. You're going to have to really think about it, but I think Goddard's such a talented player. He's going to find his role somewhere, just like Trey Burton did.
Yeah, maybe not this year, but if you're one of these teams that has older tight ends, he's worth a dart. Ray, we will get to Michael Thomas when we get to the Saints here in a little while. All right. Last and probably least, the Washington professional football franchise. They trade for Alex Smith in the offseason. Colt McCoy is a great backup. They have Kevin Hogan there, who is in the NFL, I guess, still. Alex Smith, though, is he going to be better, worse, or about the same for this offense compared to Kirk Cousins?
Well, with the state of their line and with how it seems like every one of their players is going down, Jordan Reed's going to join that crew very shortly. What I mean with other people, I mean with Geis going down, and also Doxson is apparently banged up again, and even Crowder apparently has an injury right now. It's just kind of a real mess. I think he's going to have a worse season by far compared to what Casey had because, well, actually, I will say if there's one good thing, it's that under the coaching staff of Gruden, I just saw it was a recent study they had in the past 5 years or 6 years. I think he's never had a quarterback that wasn't in the top 10 with the by for fantasy. Kirk Cousins made it like 3 years, and then I forget who else he had. But
Andy Dalton before that, yeah.
Yeah, he had Andy Dalton, and actually that was Andy Dalton's really crazy good year. So I think it's a little encouraging for him, but it's going to be really rough going. This team is very bad, very, very bad.
Yeah, that's for sure. Obviously, the big news for the Redskins was rookie running back Darius Geis rips up his knee. He's done for the year. Looks like the backfield is going to be exactly the same, basically, as it was last year. Chris Thompson is going to be easily the best player at the position, but too small and too frail to maintain the workload. What did they give him the full workload for like one game and he got hurt?
Well, and also bad news about Thompson. I just told my dad this earlier. He apparently says he doesn't think he's going to be 100% until November. Yeah, this is him saying this. And apparently there's reports coming out of him on the field, and he looks off. So that could be trouble. But I think he'll recover, but there is some worry there.
Yeah, Kelly and P. Ryan, I think you'll see a little bit of a split here.
And then Rob Gibbs will probably get in there.
Yeah, he'll probably make the team now. Rob Kelly is probably going to be your lead back. I guess they're not calling him Fat Rob Kelly anymore. They're calling him Kelly. So, but we've actually seen Rob Kelly do some good things. P. Ryan, for that matter. We've actually seen those guys do some good things in the NFL. It's just they're not the type of player that Geis is, and it's a shame. These guys are going to get overdrafted in our league because guys are going to be owners are going to be so desperate for running backs. These guys just probably going to be 4th round picks, both of them. To answer your question, Carlo, Darius Geis should still get picked. That said, you're drafting a rookie coming off an ACL. Who knows what they're going to do next year? Double-digit rounds for me. I mean, if you have a spot to burn, it's just you're burning up a draft pick on a guy that's not going to play, and that's tough to do in a league that's as competitive as this. Where would you take him?
I wonder what kind of team could afford to take a player like him.
I could take him, actually.
Well, you could. I could, too.
Yeah, you could, too. I mean, yeah, I have draft picks.
It definitely was a huge risk. I would say whoever does it is not going to benefit from it by where they take him. Somebody will jump on it way too quick. I with the way that the draft goes now, I could see him going. I could see somebody being bold enough to take him in like round 12, round 10. And that's extremely high. But I bet you somebody will do it.
And if you're, I mean, you have to have some stones. If you're a playoff team, like if you're trying to win the league this year, this is a really difficult thing to do because you're basically just it's like setting a draft pick on fire, and that's really tough to do. But definitely he should definitely get picked. It's just don't take him too early. It's just going to be, I mean, you're probably going to have to take him in the 10th round now that you said that, Con. Tight end Jordan Reed is great when he plays. Vernon Davis is great when Jordan Reed doesn't play. Is there any reason for Kevin to expect Jordan Reed to be healthy for once?
No, and that's why he owned Davis last year. The question is, will he be able to draft him quick enough this year? Because I feel like with the amount of new rookie tight ends, the available veteran players that have usually been around are a lot thinner. So I feel like tight ends are going to go very fast. And I think Vernon Davis will be a commodity in this year's draft.
Yeah, and if he doesn't get picked, he should be like in that first round of waivers because he has utility even when Reed is healthy in a 2 tight end league, which if you didn't know, that's what our league is. At wide receiver, go ahead.
Because Alex Smith is going to love throwing to the tight end. I mean, he threw to Kelsey constantly. It's going to be nothing different. Cousins doesn't matter to Jordan Reed's potential.
And not for nothing, Alex Smith and Vernon Davis played together in San Francisco years ago. So remember that. Yeah. At wide receiver, their big acquisition in the offseason was Paul Richardson from Seattle. Richardson has had a lot of injuries.
And he's the only one healthy.
Yeah, right. And he makes some outrageous catches. This is a very fast, very talented receiver, but the dude is so you take one look at him. There's no wonder he gets hurt all the time. I mean, he's so slight of build, but he is a talented player. What do you like about this receiving core? I mean, it's like this would be like a great Madden receiving core when you don't have to worry about like injuries as much and all that. But what do you like about these guys?
I like I think their hands of this roster are impressive. I think Crowder can kind of catch every ball. You've got to love having a player like Crowder on your team. And then when you have two speedy guys like Doxson and Richardson that can pull off these big, like impressive, replay on ESPN kind of highlights, it's a roster that if they stayed healthy the whole time, one of these guys would probably be a superstar. The sad thing is I don't think any of them ever will be because of the injuries, but the potential is there. Like you said, if you're playing Madden, you would love to have these guys because they're not going to get hurt and you could actually see what they could do.
Yeah,
for sure. Going to happen.
The rest of these guys, Brian Quick is still here, mostly for special teams. Simi Cobbs out of Indiana, they have as a rookie. He's a big, like 6'4", 6'5" guy. Only ran a 4.64 40, though, so he's definitely more of a possession guy. But the guys that are ahead of him on this depth chart don't inspire me too much. If you want to throw like a 17th, 18th round pick at Simi Cobbs, and maybe he's one of the guys you cut for a kicker, but then now you have his rights, he could come on towards the end of the season.
Remember Brian Quick?
Brian Quick, 1,000-yard season one year, if I'm not mistaken, with the Rams. Brian Quick, man. What a savage. He was the 33rd pick of the 2012 draft. His best season. No, he did. I'm thinking of somebody else. His best season was 2016, the year before he joined the Redskins. 41 catches, 564 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Not exactly inspiring a whole lot of confidence there. I think I'm thinking of Kenny Britt, actually.
The LA Rams are like such an inspiration for Cleveland because you think about the Rams like back like 5 years ago, and they were literally what the Cleveland Browns were until this season. The Cleveland Browns could definitely turn this around.
Yeah, for sure.
The Rams had some terrible draft picks, but they always drafted defense well, and it's kind of the same thing going on for Cleveland now. Now they have like an opportunity. They have a new quarterback. They have all these weapons. They could be the new Rams.
Right. Moving on, let's jump down to New Orleans to answer Ray's question. At quarterback, they've got Drew Brees, and then they have Tom Savage. So if Drew Brees gets hurt, abandon ship on all Saints wide receivers. Okay. But that said, the running back situation is pretty good. They have Alvin Kamara, who is pretty good. Mark Ingram is suspended, so Ray needs to make other plans there. And then they've got Shane Vereen, Boston Scott, Terrence West, Jonathan Williams, a bunch of Jags after that. Why don't you break down this running back group a little bit more for us?
I think Alvin Kamara is going to shine the first 4 weeks. Weirdly enough, I think Shane Vereen probably won't be the guy together. I could actually see like Terrence West making the roster or something. I don't know. I feel like they should sign somebody else. Maybe like an Arlene Darkwa or something.
Maybe Adrian Peterson.
Nah. And then when Mark Ingram comes back, I honestly hope nothing changes from last season. I don't want Alvin Kamara to be a feature back yet, or maybe ever. I'm totally as an Alvin Kamara owner. There's nothing that's going to make me happier than Mark Ingram returning to the lineup. I really believe that. I think they're a great 1-2 punch, and they're both going to score fantasy points. And I think that with the way the preseason is turning out, and Mark Ingram's pretty much looks like he isn't getting suspended while he's playing, I think they're going to give him every opportunity to just come right back in after that.
Step back into that role. They do have a rookie, Boston Scott.
Boston Scott.
I could play a little bit of that Mark Ingram role, but it's going to be very much a Mark Ingram light. I think you'll see. I don't know if the Saints want to give Kamara all that work. There's people talking about taking Kamara in redraft leagues like with the first pick because of those first 4 weeks. If you think he's getting like 20 carries and 6 catches, I don't see that. I think that would be a stupid thing for the Saints to do, and the Saints are well coached. I don't think they're going to do anything like that at all.
They're going to have somebody else there, and I'm so happy that they will. I really think if he's going to be a top 5 running back in fantasy with a shared load, then go for it. I'm totally happy with it.
Yeah, we don't need Alvin Kamara taking 3rd and 1 runs up the middle. At tight end, they brought back Benjamin Watson, who is the ageless wonder. He continues to play, and there's really nobody else at tight end. Do we want Ben Watson, or do you just kind of want to move on from tight ends, find somewhere else?
Well, I mean, there is value with New Orleans offense and at tight end. I think Benjamin Watson's going to get his touchdowns. I think he'll be a good waiver filler. He'll be on somebody's team pretty much throughout the season, I would say. Also, do you see who's there at number 5 on the depth chart? I thought he retired by now.
Oh, who that guy? Nice. Not for nothing, by the way. This offensive line is great here in New Orleans, so keep that in mind. It's not super deep, but they do have a really good starting lineup. At wide receiver, Michael Thomas obviously is your number 1, and I think Michael Thomas is probably the best wide receiver that Drew Brees has ever had. I think he's better than Marcus Colston, and that's pretty much everyone he's ever had. Michael Thomas is a great, great player. Ray, unfortunately, where does Ray have him? In keepers. It's high, I think, like the 3rd round. So that's like pretty much a retail price for him in our league. But whatever, that's fine. He'll give you wide receiver 1 production. He's a great player.
He's got a 5th round.
5th round, yeah, that's even a little bit of a discount there. So Michael Thomas, definitely a top 14 wide receiver, probably top 10. Great player. The rest of this group, Ted Ginn, he's going to have like 4 good games, but you're not going to know when they're going to be. But that's another one of those guys. You know the name, you know the game. Cameron Meredith comes over from Chicago after that. I believe it was an ACL last year. What's the deal with Cameron Meredith here?
I think he's got the perfect team to kind of make another run at it and see if he can showcase what his abilities are. I mean, the guy is a super talented guy. I'd love to see him stay healthy and really see what he can do. That being said, if he were to go down, really watch out for Traquan Smith. He just needs the right kind of niche to find his way in, whether he can jump around on somebody, maybe even Ted Ginn at some point in the season if they really like what he's got. I think he's a rookie that you shouldn't get super high on and make his draft stock go way up because he won't be worth it at that point. But if he ends up being a late round flyer for this league, I think he could be a really interesting player that could, at least maybe in the future, or maybe not with Drew Brees retiring either. But if the system stays the same, I think he should have success. I think he's an interesting wide receiver.
Yeah, he's more of a.
Meredith could easily be the number 2 quickly. I think Meredith is a very good talent.
Yeah, for sure. Smith is one of those guys you draft late and cut for your defense before week 1. So
and when he gets really good, like at week 13, and somebody else signs him, you're like, motherfucker, at least let him for next year.
Yep, and that happens every year, multiple times a year. Feel free to ask more questions, guys. We have 6 viewers right now, Connor.
And nobody's asking questions.
It's wild. Let's go up to Atlanta. Matt Ryan is owned by Steve. It's going to be a QB1. Matt Schaub is still in the league, I guess. Holy crap. Coming soon, pick 6s. Anyway, Devonta Freeman, Tevin Coleman. I won't spend a ton of time on them because they're both owned. Tevin Coleman in ADP right now is going in the 6th round, which is insane in other drafts. But these guys are both going to be every week starts in our league. We won't belabor the point. If something happens to one of those guys, though, what do you think about the rest of this group? Ito Smith, Justin Crawford, Terrence McGee, Malik Williams. Anyone jumping out to you?
Oh, yeah, Ito Smith, especially if it's Coleman that goes down. I think Ito Smith is going to be the Coleman replacement once he signs somewhere else next season. I think that's entirely what it is. Ito Smith, to me, is kind of like the Walden. When Gio Bernard's done, he's going to be the new Gio Bernard. But this is a bit more enticing than Gio Bernard to me. So I think Smith's a really great late pick. And I think if any of those guys go down, like you said, he's going to be the guy to step right in.
Yeah, I definitely think Smith, another one of those draft him and cut him for a kicker types for sure. Because unless there's an injury, he's not going to have any utility this year. At tight end, you've got Austin Hooper there. He's a tight end too, and he's owned by Carlo, I believe. So we'll just kind of let that hang there. None of these other guys, at least in my opinion, none of these other guys have any utility this year in pretty much any circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
At wide receiver, Julio Jones is pretty good. Mohamed Sanu is a player you always want in your team. Calvin Ridley was a first round pick. Justin Hardy has been playing the slot for a little while. Is there anyone outside of, you can skip over Julio, but outside of him, like how do you see the rest of this wide receiver core breaking down?
I think that with Ridley here now, this is where Justin Hardy's going to – I feel like he was a guy that people thought was going to break out at some point. I think this is just like he's probably never going to have a career at this point, which is unfortunate because people talked him up for a long time. I think Calvin Ridley, while not having it be the best for this year opportunity, he could have been drafted somewhere else and really had a bigger effect. I think it's a great place to go for him as in real life, though, because if Julio Jones is to go somewhere else, if he is unhappy, Calvin Ridley's going to step right into that role and pretty much be the next Julio, I think. And I mean, Mohamed Sanu is a great player, but I don't see any reason why Calvin Ridley by next year won't be taking over the league with his talent.
Carlo, please refer to him as UML champion Queef Wellington. Will do. But yeah, no, I think Ridley is being slept on. He may not be the greatest this year, but I think he'll long term be a really, really good player. Maybe he'll be the player that everyone thought Justin was going to be for some reason. That's pretty much it for the Falcons. Their kicker's good too. So if you want a kicker, Panthers. This is
Doug,
Joe.
I really appreciate you taking the time to give us updates on all the kickers on each team.
Thank you. I only mention it when they have good kickers
or really bad ones.
Yeah, right. Here on the Panthers, you have Cam Newton, who, by the way, for the record, would totally wreck Kelvin Benjamin in a fight. Cam Newton, he's a top 5-6 quarterback, and he's owned. We'll breeze right past him. The tight end position on this team is really interesting. You have Greg Olsen, who looked really, really old last year. They draft Ian Thomas, I want to say out of Stanford there in the fourth round. Stanford? Indiana, sorry. So he was pretty good in college. I'm not sure a fourth round tight end though is going to get on the field enough when Greg Olsen's on the team to have much of an impact. But if you liked him in college, I full disclosure did not watch him in college. I've only seen his training camp highlights. So
clearly, because you didn't know what team he was on.
Yeah, right. So Ian Thomas could be something, but fourth round tight ends aren't really worth a draft pick this year. What do you think we're going to see out of Olsen this year, though, Connor?
It's going to slow down a little bit, but it's going to be very steady, very safe. I think he's still going to finish maybe in the top 5, but most definitely in the top 10. He's just a safe, awesome tight end to have. I think he's still got another year or two in him. But yeah.
Well, he's got one foot out the door already into the broadcast booth.
They said that, and then he signed a new contract. So, I mean, how much of that is true?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, he for what it's worth, though, he did broadcast a game last season.
Yeah, because he had nothing better to do. He had a bum knee
during the season. They have Christian McCaffrey, who's going to go in the top 3 picks in our league. Was a pass catching running back as a rookie. They say they want to use him a little bit more. He should be great. Cameron Artis-Payne is still on this goddamn team,
and they say he's second on the depth chart, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, no. C.J. Anderson will definitely overtake him, and should, by the way. C.J. Anderson, I think, is a
great in preseason, by the way.
Yeah, underrated player. All day long.
Was Carlos' question directed at McCaffrey? Is that what that was?
Yeah, he said McCaffrey improvement or regression. Want to take that one for us?
I'd say improvement. Maybe not in for fantasy terms, but I think in terms of his run game, he may be just around the same, I would say, for fantasy, just because of his high catch rate, which is for PPR. I think he's pretty much just going to stay that solid PPR guy. But in terms of real life, I think he's going to drastically improve his run game, I would hope, for his
Yeah. Last year, he was 1,000 total yards and 7 touchdowns with 80 receptions. That's really good in our league. So, but to your point, he only averaged 3.7 yards a carry. I would imagine that to go up a little bit. If he's put on any muscle at all. He's been in the league a little bit longer. And the Panthers, which we'll get to in a little bit, they don't have a ton, in terms of short area pass catchers, other than him. And who knows what we're going to get out of Olsen and some of those other guys. But I think Christian McCaffrey, I think he'll improve. I don't think it'll be a lot. He wasn't like this ridiculously efficient player last year, kind of like Alvin Kamara was, where there's regression coming. It's just like a matter of how much and will the workload offset it and all that.
He just got like 10 passes a game.
Yeah,
which is like ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure. Christian McCaffrey, every bit worth that top 3 pick, and should be fine as long as he's healthy. CJ Anderson is we talk about every time when he goes in the mock, he's one of those players that no one's going to be like, oh, you son of a bitch when you draft him, but he's going to be a running back 3 for you. That's going to probably stay healthy, and you're going to be really glad you drafted him, most likely.
Yeah.
At wide receiver, Devin Funchess is, he's a wide receiver 3. I think we'd be kidding ourselves if we think he's going to be exactly what he was last year. Because with Olsen missing all that time, Cam threw his way a lot, and he was much worse in games that Olsen didn't play in. Steve has a question here about DJ Moore. Will he be the number 1 wide receiver for the Panthers by the end of the season? I don't know if anybody watched that Panthers-Bills preseason game.
Yeah, I was going to say, is me already?
Yeah. DJ Moore is already the best receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know when, how long it's going to take him to, be in that role on the offense, in terms of blocking, knowing the playbook and all that other stuff. But he's,
I like DJ Moore, but I wasn't super thrilled about his spot in Carolina. After watching that game, I'm very pleased, and I think DJ Moore is going to be a great player for this year.
Yeah, he's going to go in like the 3rd or 4th round, and he's going to
be worth that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He may be the best rookie wide receiver this year.
Carlo asks McCaffrey or Cook, and for me it's McCaffrey. For me it's Cook. And I don't know that it's super close. Cook's got a bunch of pass catching upside and is going to get all those short yardage work. He's going to score more touchdowns than Christian McCaffrey. And I personally think if you're assuming Saquon Barkley goes number 1, if you're sitting at number 2 where Steve is right now, I'm going Dalvin Cook. What are your thoughts, Connor?
Yeah, I guess the simple answer is I pick Cook. The more detailed example of why is I see McCaffrey being running back 10 or maybe running back 8, and that's going to be pretty much a guarantee. As for Cook, I could see him being in the top 5, or I could see him being in the top 15.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have Cook because of that potential of being in the top 5.
Yeah, I agree with that, and just the workload thing for me is just what it comes back to. These other receivers they have here: Torrey Smith, Curtis Samuel, fast guys that aren't going to have that much fantasy utility. Is that basically what they are?
Yeah, pretty much. They'll get one big bomb for 70 yards at random moments, and that's pretty much it. Yeah,
but DJ Moore is the guy you want here. Is there anyone else on this list? Jarius Wright? Anyone else worth talking about?
I've heard Jarius Wright is getting rave reviews. He's catching everything coming his way. I think that just basically means he'll probably make the roster. I don't really know that he'll do anything. I mean, we've seen it in Minnesota year after year how great he is, and he never does anything. But I think he'll probably make the team. He may be somebody to look for.
Yeah, Damiere Byrd was great last preseason, and I think he had a little bit at the end of end of last season. But DJ Moore is just going to take him right off the field, so it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Graham Gano is also a good kicker. Tampa Bay. The quarterback position here is very interesting. Why don't you take us through that?
Did you say quarterback?
Quarterback, yeah.
Yeah, Jameis Winston is suspended for being a dumbass again. So we've got Ryan Fitzpatrick starting those first 3 weeks. 3, right?
Mm-hmm. 3 weeks.
I don't see anything wrong with Fitzpatrick starting those 3 weeks. I think he's totally capable. And I've actually, in some of the games, it kind of brought the team together more in a way. I think Winston's much more talented, but I think he's definitely going to be a fine journeyman that's just going to keep things flowing for those first 3 weeks. I could see them going 2-1, depending on who their opponent is, with no problem. I think the roster is really loaded, so it's kind of like a Denver situation where he's got all those weapons that even though he's not, an A1 quarterback, he's still going to have plenty of options. He's going to be a capable quarterback. If you're really not, if you really don't have a good quarterback or you drafted a rookie that isn't playing yet, Fitzpatrick could be a good late round quarterback for you to draft while that's happening. And then when Winston comes back, it's going to be back to business for him, and I think hopefully he'll have a really solid year. He had a really great year in a really frustrating way last season.
There have been some rumblings that Griffin could get that job. I don't think he'll get it in time to start those 3 games, but I wouldn't expect Ryan Fitzpatrick to be back next year. That said, I think you hit it. If you draft, if you're Joe and you draft Josh Rosen high like he did in the last mock, knowing that he's not going to play for the first few weeks, Ryan Fitzpatrick's a good guy to have on your team. I don't know that I'd actually spend a draft pick on him. He's old. I mean, and I swear Ryan Fitzpatrick is on a mission to start for every NFL team. He's been on like 9 teams already and finds a way to start at least one game every year. But if you're really up against it, say you draft a guy like Josh Rosen or Josh Allen or whoever, and you think, hey, I'll get Case Keenum later, and then you don't, and you want to spend a 17th round pick on Ryan Fitzpatrick, I'm not going to kill you for it. There's just nothing to be gained from that, in my opinion. At running back, Peyton Barber's listed as first on the depth chart. They have Jaquiz Rogers, who apparently they give the ball to 60 times plays. But the guy that everyone wants to hear about is Ronald Jones. 8 carries for 9 yards and a touchdown in his first preseason game. Did you like what you saw from him, Connor? Or is this kind of a crowded backfield with Sims and Rogers and Barber and Jones? Or do you think Jones has the talent to kind of overcome all that?
I think we have a couple more weeks to see if Jones can put it together, but I'm starting to think Peyton Barber's a name to think about on draft day. I think there's a very good chance with the way it's looking, they may be coming out early in the season with Barber as their back. He's capable. He's nothing special, but they seem to like him. He did okay last season. Jones is definitely not trending up right now. There's a very good chance that this could become a committee situation if he doesn't pick up his game.
Yeah, and that's a dirty word. We don't like committees. Last year, to your point, Peyton Barber, 108 carries for 423 yards and 3 touchdowns, caught 16 passes, so he can give you a little bit there as well. He's not flashy, and he'll be on a bunch of teams. I don't know when I would draft him, referring to Peyton Barber, but he definitely is going to have some utility, I think, particularly early in the season.
And I mean, if you're a big Ronald Jones hater, you're thinking I wouldn't hate somebody saying they think Peyton Barber could be the starter for a majority of the season, and maybe that's a really good value at that point.
Does that first preseason game and the reports on Barber, does that change where you draft Jones, or is he still like a late first, early second round pick?
I do think he'll drop. I think a lot of the rookies are starting to drop. We'll see. But with this preseason, by the time draft day comes around, they may be back right where they were, depending on how the reports come out. I think the rookie running backs always fluctuate quite a bit, and we'll get the true story by preseason week 3. We'll see who makes it out.
We're 2 weeks away from the draft as of this recording, and a lot can happen in those 2 weeks.
We could see Ronald Jones next preseason game have like a 100-yard game, and everybody be talking about like how fantastic he is.
all of a sudden it would be, should Alex take him at 4? It's
yeah.
so there's that. At tight end, any of these other guys interesting at all? Charles Sims, maybe it's a waiver guy.
I'm just curious to see if Sims or Rogers gets cut out of the two, or if they're going to have that many running backs. Which could also be a sign on how they feel, if it's going to be a committee or not too. If there's a bunch of backs, that's probably not a good sign.
Yeah, that's good. I think draft wise, no one needs to be spending picks on anybody other than Barber or Jones. At tight end, Cameron Brate unfortunately resigned to take targets away from OJ Howard. Can these guys coexist, do we think, or what's the scoop at the tight end position?
Well, one of these tight ends looked real good in the first preseason game, and it wasn't Howard. But I think they can, depending on. I think it's going to depend on how much Godwin steps up the season when we get to the wide receivers to talk about it more. But I think Jackson's kind of on the decline, and Godwin is a kind of a wild card right now. So if the wide receivers aren't looking the way they should, I could see them running 2 tight end sets and being very happy about it.
Yeah, for sure. And they're going to. They have a lot invested in the position.
Oh yeah,
those guys are both going to be on the field a lot. And because there's those 2 good tight ends, not one other tight end on Tampa Bay has even like 1 ounce of fantasy relevance. So we're not going to spend any time on that. Besides, I think Brate's owned, Howard's owned. At wide receiver, Mike Evans. One of these days, he's got to put it together, right? Mike Evans is.
Well, the thing is, you say that, but he is also, out of rookie wide receivers from his rookie date to now, he has more yards than anyone. So I mean, he's.
Well, yeah, but Odell Beckham missed like an entire season.
Yeah, but he's also Odell Beckham.
Does he actually? Is that actually a real statistic, by the way?
Yeah, it is.
He's
over 3,000.
Yeah, so Mike Evans has 4,579 career receiving yards. Odell Beckham has 4,424 and missed most of last season. So tread carefully on that one.
That's like saying like MJ compared to like, I don't know, to some guy. But yeah, I think.
But to your point, he hasn't been as bad.
It's all about him and Winston growing up. I think that's been the case for many seasons now, and it's still a work in progress. You'd think that they just came out of college still, with the way they act, especially with last season's antics. So if they can just mature, then I think they could be probably one of the best quarterback wide receiver combos in the league. But they just have to grow up. Yeah,
and we've seen the upside, a couple of years ago. But as long as Mike Evans can, do some stuff that, so he's got to catch more of his targets. That's a big thing for him. His catch rate's not super great, and I know Jameis Winston isn't exactly the world's most accurate passer. But to your point, you did mention Deshaun Jackson. A report came out from the Buccaneers this week that Chris Godwin is going to start opposite Mike Evans. So Chris Godwin is already surpassed Deshaun Jackson. And it kind of is interesting, though, because I think it actually is a good thing for Deshaun Jackson to kind of be just a true deep threat and other stuff. Yeah. But he's like, we were talking before about the Torrey Smiths and the Mike Wallaces, how they're kind of that deep threat type receiver.
He's become that.
Yeah, Deshaun Jackson is the best version of that, right? So having that be kind of like a Taylor Gabriel part of the offense, I think will be great for the Bucs. I think it'll be good for Deshaun Jackson. I think it'll add some space to his career. You can use him on punt returns more now because you don't have to worry about him getting hurt on offense. As far as his fantasy value goes, I think it severely depresses it, frankly. But I think he'll be a better NFL player this year than fantasy player.
Yes.
And then go ahead.
Humphreys is an interesting PPR guy. He has his moments. He'll probably get picked up on waivers during the season at some point.
Yeah, he had 60 catches for 600 yards last year. I don't know if he's a guy you draft, but he's not a bad bench. Yeah, he's not a bad bench receiver if you want to get down. The guy that we should talk about more is Chris Godwin. This is a guy who he could be a number 1 NFL receiver if he wasn't on a team with Mike Evans, but he is on a team with Mike Evans and OJ Howard and Cameron Brate and Deshaun Watson and or Deshaun Watson, Deshaun Jackson, and Adam Humphries, frankly, is going to catch a lot of passes. The upside here, I think, is a little bit limited, but he is a talented player. And I think he's probably going to go in like the 8th-ish round, 9th round, and I think that's fine. I think that's a perfect spot.
I think back a couple years ago when Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson coexisted. I mean, Vincent Jackson still put up pretty solid numbers. I think Godwin has every opportunity to be a pretty fantastic wide receiver. They can coexist.
Do you think at where he's going to go in our draft, you think it's good value?
Or do you think he's going to go?
I think he's going to go in anywhere from like the 7th to 9th round.
Definitely, I think that's a good value.
Yeah, I mean,
for second wide receivers on a team, he's probably one of the best.
He's not the biggest guy. He's only 6'1", but he's big enough. He's fast enough. He's
a good possession receiver.
Yeah, he's a good player, and watch us be totally wrong on him, but he'll be worth the price of admission. Get some more questions from you guys as we change gears to the NFC North. My computer wants to catch up, and let's go ahead and talk about Steve's Chicago Bears. Have you liked what you've seen from Mitch Trubisky so far?
I thought for last year, for coming out as a rookie and having kind of a pretty not okay team, I think he handled himself really well. Mm-hmm. I've heard some bad reports about him so far in camp this year, but I don't read too much into that. I think he needs to be very good this year with all of the weapons they've given him. I think this is definitely going to be a telltale year, but I see no reason why the sky's the limit for him with this roster at this point. I think he's going to show something, or he's just going to be a complete bust. Which, for Steve's sake, I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, Mitch Trubisky.
I don't think it will. I think he'll be an adequate quarterback.
Yeah, and they have better coaching this year. We saw it with Jared Goff last year. I don't know that he's going to have that kind of a leap forward, but I think he'll be.
It's a similar style player. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I think he'll take that step forward into that mess of QB2s. That instead of being on the back end of it, I think he'll be in the middle of it. Quarterback 2 on a team like Steve's, who has Matt Ryan and only needs a quarterback 2. Mm-hmm. At running back, Jordan Howard, also owned by Steve, was not as good last year as he was as a rookie, but people acted like he was like a complete bomb. He still went up for over 1,000. The guy's reliable, and I gotta laugh at Steve a little bit here. And I've told him this privately too, but there was reports that Jordan Howard had been working on his pass catching. And last year, Jordan Howard was like the worst pass catcher in the entire NFL at any position. He dropped 15% of his targets. Now, he didn't catch them. Dropped them. It means they hit him in the hands, and he dropped them. And plus, he's on a team with Tariq Cohen and even Benny Cunningham, who are much, much better pass-catching running backs. He's not even going to be on the field for a lot of those. If he catches 50, I don't know, if he catches like 35 passes, I'll be stunned. That with Jordan. What did he do last year anyway for catches? Do you want to tell us a little bit about Tariq Cohen since he's actually available, Connor?
He kind of had his ups and downs last season. I think it's a little unfair to just kind of shit on him towards parts of that. But he's a very for fantasy, he's very intriguing. He can do a lot of different things and get you points in very bizarre ways. He's kind of what you want out of a fantasy running back in a lot of ways for PPR. He can catch the ball really well. He has like some very explosive plays. If you look at his highlights, you'll really want to draft him probably. That said, Jordan Howard's there. Jordan Howard's the kind of player that he needs a lot of carries to do well, and they're going to give him that opportunity, I believe. But I think Cohen's going to get his fair share. It's going to be a nice combo, and I think he's definitely a value in our league.
Yeah, he had about 700 total yards and 3 touchdowns. He went in the middle of the second round, I believe, in our mock, and I think he'll go somewhere between there and the middle of the third round as those running backs start to come off the board. Is that a little rich, or do you think that's just what it's going to cost to get him on your team?
I think it's going to be what it's going to cost because it's a PPR league. I think if it was a non-PPR, we probably wouldn't barely be talking about him at this point. But I think he's got just that quirk to him where it's kind of he's like a Tim Tebow at running back, where like if you watch him do his plays, you see him get -8 yards, which happened quite a few times when they're trying to run a play. Gets -8 yards and then goes back the next play and gets like a 30-yard touchdown. So I mean, in terms of real time, it's maybe not be the best option all the time, but I think with the new coaching staff, they're going to work him in much better, and I think they'll actually have a lot less failures like they had with him, which I think was one of his biggest turnoffs from last season.
And I mean, he was a rookie, so he could obviously improve in that regard. Just turned 23, still a young player. I think, like I said, he had 53 catches last year for 350 yards. I could see him doing, 65 for 500. I can see that. Anything, and if he does that, then I think he'll have a other thing. You can keep in mind, there's a new play caller coming over from Kansas City where they really like throwing to the running backs. So bear that in mind with Tariq Cohen. The price for me seems a little rich, but it's.
I think the big word is there's so many options to throw to. That's my only concern with them.
For sure.
I think they'll utilize him better, though.
Right. At tight end, Trey Burton, Adam Shaheen. What do we think about these guys?
I feel bad for Shaheen. I thought he was about to break out for this season, but Trey Burton's going to get that now. He's going to be the new Burton, maybe, the white guy version. But I see Trey Burton. He could be overhyped. I could see that happening. He could have like a meh year, but I see him being a top 20 tight end, no doubt.
Yeah, he's an every week start, and I think Shaheen will have a bit of utility.
I think he'd probably be a waiver guy, but he could get you a good week.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. At wide receiver, though, this is probably the most interesting group on the team. Kevin White's still on the team, but he's being outplayed by rookie Javon Wims. I mean, you saw Javon Wims have a great preseason game. He's looked better in camp. Is Kevin White going to make the team?
It'll be. How many wide receivers do you think you're going to keep?
Probably 6, I would say.
I think they'll still make it. I think with what they drafted him at, they're going to try to keep him around just to see if he can play a season, probably. But with the amount of playing time he's going to get, I just don't think he's ever going to show it with Chicago. I think we'll have to sign somewhere else to have a shot ever again. But I think he'll probably make the team,
but barely.
There's a couple guys that have been around the league, like Fowler with Denver. He had that like weird moment when there was nobody else to throw to. Like those guys, I think could probably end up getting cut. So I think they'll go with the upside of Kevin White and just see how it goes, especially with how talented their roster is with him not even playing.
They do have a second-year receiver, Tanner Gentry, who out of Wyoming. He was a top target for Josh Allen before this past season. Who has looked good in preseason. There's just so many mouths to feed. Marlon Brown, once upon a time, was supposed to be good. But Javon Wims has looked good. I bet he makes the team. Taylor Gabriel's going to make the team. Taylor Gabriel's utility, by the way, again, he's one of those deep threat Deshaun Jackson type guys that'll have his weeks. I don't know that you need to own Taylor Gabriel, coming out of the draft, but pick him up once the bye weeks start, maybe, or if he didn't get a receiver, he gets some injuries, whatever. What do we think about Allen Robinson? It's been a while since we've seen him play or play well, for that matter. That 1,400 yard, 14 touchdown season, I believe, was in 2015.
I think as long as he's healthy and 100%, I think he'll be just fine. I mean, when you go from Blake Bortles to Trubisky, I mean, it's got to be an upgrade, right? I guess. So I mean, I think he'll be fine in the system, and I think with the fact that the two guys that are going to be kind of trying to get his catches away from him is going to be two rookies, and then having Gabriel kind of be the trick play guy, I think he's going to be the man on that team. He's going to be the first guy they look at. So I think he's going to have a great season.
Cool. And then obviously the one everyone's waiting for us to talk about is Memphis rookie Anthony Miller, who's looked great in camp, and all of that. Where do you see he projects to this season?
He kind of reminds me of a slightly less athletic. Well, he's about there. I'd say he kind of reminds me of Callaway without all the trouble. I feel like if you're going to draft a guy, I think Anthony Miller has really been looking fantastic in camp. He's been making some really wow plays. The only problem is this offense has a lot of options, as we said. So he may not really stand out too much his rookie season, but I think this is a guy for Dynasty that could be really, really, especially if Allen Robinson doesn't work out. You know, that does happen often. You have guys that were look like Roy Williams with Dallas. He was a big time wide receiver and he signed with a new team and suddenly he wasn't all that was advertised. So I mean Anthony Miller could be the guy within a year, maybe 2 years. And yeah, I think he's a talent.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a good player. I'm not so sure that he's going to be like you said, great just because of all the other options. But like let's get Kevin White out of here. Let's figure out this tight end situation a little bit more, and eventually,
Finally have a season where you have like a wide receiver stay more than a year. Like
yeah,
it's like they're either there or they're gone.
Yeah, for sure. I think Anthony Miller though is going to be a good player, and he's worth the. I think we had him going in like the 7th, 8th round or something like that when we did our mock, and I think that's about right.
Yeah, it could go a little higher if he shows something in preseason, but I think that's about where you'll get him.
Yeah, talk about boring team. The Detroit Lions. Matthew Stafford is good. He's I think probably an underrated NFL quarterback. I don't know how great he's going to be in fantasy, but he'll be a top 10 QB1, whatever. The running back situation, though, Connor, you want to take us through that? And are you going near it? Is it a mess? How do you feel about the running back situation? And where are the rest of the running backs on the team? Oh, there they are. Okay.
I personally don't know that I want to go near it. I think it's weird that they have Johnson lined up with Riddick instead of. Anyway, I think Blunt's going to get in the way a lot, which may not be for real football. It's probably not a bad choice. I think he is a quality football player. I mean, he's been on how many Super Bowl teams now?
Yeah, right.
But
Lions are next.
I think Riddick's still going to have his role, which for PPR really hurts any value from anyone you want as the lead back, because Riddick's going to be getting all those passing downs. But I think Johnson he's going to be a name to look for. I think Abdullah's days are numbered. I just kind of hope they don't keep throwing him out there this season again. I hope they just kind of realize it and kind of move on. Zach Zenner's still there. He's always been like a preseason favorite to talk about, and he never does anything.
Can we get more Zach Zenner and less Amir Abdullah?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, that would be much better. But yeah, I think Dwayne Washington's going to be probably cut this time around after that one moment he had where everybody thought maybe he had something and he didn't. But I think it's going to be Johnson's backfield at some point, but it's going to be shared with Blunt and Riddick, and it's going to be a mess. I really do think that.
Another one of those running back situations where it's like if you need a running back, you kind of got to get into it anyway, but you're not going to feel good about it. But yeah, somebody will emerge. Yeah, I mean, Theo Riddick's going to do Theo Riddick things. That's the one thing you can probably count on in this group.
And Blunt's, if you want a guy who's going to get you touchdowns, and that's all you care about throughout weeks, Blunt's probably a good guy to pick up late.
Yeah,
maybe or is he owned?
Blunt? I don't believe so. I think he's on the board.
Yeah, I think he's probably going around the 7-8 area. Probably even sooner. I feel like we forgot about him then.
Yeah, I don't know. He's a really boring player to take, but I think he'll end up being good.
We got
Joe,
2 questions going.
Joe, if you want Eric Ebron, you should probably listen to our AFC podcast because he's on the Colts now. Why don't we answer Kevin's question here? Marvin Jones is a good player. Marvin Jones catches touchdowns. Marvin Jones drops passes sometimes, but he's still a good player. And despite the hype and people liking him and this and that, he is a better player than Kenny Golladay, and Kenny Golladay is not going to take him off the field. Now, what Kenny Golladay will do is come on the field and let Golden Tate go into the slot, which is where he belongs. And the rising tide there, I think, lifts all boats. I think all those guys are going to be usable fantasy assets.
And from what I hear, Jones is having the best camp of all the wide receivers there.
Marvin Jones.
Marvin Jones, yeah.
So they've got a lot of Joneses.
Yeah, there's that.
There are 3 Jones wide receivers on their team. T.J. Marvin and Andy Jones. Be after those, yeah, right. Kenny Galladay is an interesting kind of like later round guy if you want to like take a flyer on him in the. What do you think? Like the
guy, but he was so hyped last season, it was like unreal.
Yeah, it was like, and it was like right after we did our draft. I think entirely too early last year, and he kind of missed the boat. He should have been like a late round pick last year, but ended up not going. Snag him if you need a receiver. Beyond that, Jace Billingsley is a little white receiver that would be lucky to make the team, and I don't really like any of these other guys in pretty much any circumstance. Do you feel differently?
No, I think it's pretty set in stone.
But Kenny G is so smooth; he runs smooth routes, according to Carlo. Yeah, and that's true. But he also got hurt. He's been, and he's the third receiver on a team that is going to try.
That's better. Jones is better than him. That's it.
Yeah, it's just, and they're very similar. They're very similar players. Is the main thing. Luke Wilson, they signed a tight end. Okay, I guess not really. Luke Wilson is one of those guys. He'll probably be on someone's team all season, but if you're going to draft him, you can do it. You can do it very late, and I believe that. Their kicker, also Matt Prater, is one of the best in the business, so watch out for him. Let's move on to Green Bay. Green Bay is a very fantasy-rich environment because of quarterback Aaron Rodgers, but we've seen that when he goes down, so does the entire offense. Brett Hundley's there battling out with Deshaun Kaiser. We want no part of either of those guys. Do we like this? Do we like these running back situation? This is another one that's kind of clear at the beginning of the season, but once Aaron Jones comes back, kind of looks like it's going to be a mess. What are your thoughts on that?
There's two ways I could see it. It's going to be Jamal Williams looks great, and they lean on him more than Montgomery, or Williams is going to look really bad, and Montgomery is going to like come in much more, and he'll probably be the lead back. Either way, they're both going to get touches. I see both of them, and then when Jones comes back, I don't even know anymore at that point. It's going to be a committee, but I hope Montgomery gets thrown in other kind of ways if that happens. I hope they don't just use all three of them like that. I hope they. I'm sure they will, but I think it's going to be it's basically who's going to stand out, or it's just going to be a complete mess. That's it.
Where do you see value for Ty Montgomery? Because since he's the only one that's actually available in the draft,
I would say with how he's shown that he can do it at times. Like one season, I think he went in the first round, didn't he?
Or like was like this first pick of the second round, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he lived up to it for half of the season. I think he wouldn't be bad going with them as like a kind of pick in the fifth, maybe even in the fourth.
If you own one of those other guys, I would totally draft Ty Montgomery in that range. Like a team like Adam, who like when we did the mock kind of got like screwed over at every turn because of like where his picks fell. Ty Montgomery would be a good pick for him because he will have value one way or another. It's just a question of how much. Tight end position, Jimmy Graham, Mercedes Lewis, Lance Kendricks, touchdown or bust, tight end twos. Is that kind of what we're looking at? Maybe Jimmy Graham catches enough to be a tight end one, but other than that.
And bad news for your dad. Graham apparently has been complaining about his knee, which is what he's injured multiple times throughout his career. I hope there's not more to that, but it's going to be very touchdown dependent there. If Lance Kendricks has to step up, I don't see him filling in the Graham role at all. He'll just be a touchdown guy no matter what. But I think Graham, he's going to be a decent tight end.
Yeah, Mercedes Lewis, by the way, is here to block, if anyone's wondering. Not really to catch passes. Devontae Adams is a top 10 wide receiver probably this year. Randall Cobb is going to be a decent slot receiver. But I'm more interested in the rest of these guys. Geronimo Allison seems to be looking pretty good, according to Aaron Rodgers.
I heard he might be getting cut.
Geronimo Allison?
Yeah, I've heard he's on the bottom of the block right now. I heard
Oh,
that
really?
St. Brown is looking fantastic, and Jamal Moore is looking really good, and that's putting Geronimo on the cut line. That's what I heard.
This is what I heard from Aaron Rodgers. He had an interview where
Yeah,
he just like totally
he
shredded.
also he also wanted Jordy Nelson to stay in Green Bay. That didn't happen either, did it?
Yeah, and he also said, I think this is one of the worst sessions we've had. He said via ESPN report, I don't know how you can make it simpler. You literally have what the play would be in our terminology on the card, and the effort level was very low, especially to what I'm accustomed to, having run that period for a number of years. It's not a good start for us on the carded period for the young guys. I think D'Angelo Yancey has really progressed. Geronimo Allison, obviously Jake Kumaro, but everyone else was piss poor. He says. I
Wow.
mean, of course, Aaron Rodgers does not make the personnel decisions here, but I would be very surprised if Geronimo Allison doesn't make this team, and I would imagine him
Well,
being.
if they want to keep Aaron Rodgers around, because he is not a happy camper in that organization at
Like
all.
all everything I kept hearing was like, "Where's Jordy? Where's Jordy? Where's Jordy?" Trevor Davis, I don't know if he actually got suspended for like saying bomb in an airport, but he probably will be. Jake Kumaro, Aaron Rodgers has mentioned multiple times in interviews, so he likes him, but
I
there's a
have
lot of
heard
receivers here.
Yancey's been standing out too. I have heard that.
Yeah, you got Jamon Moore, D'Angelo Yancey, Equinemius St. Brown. What's with these names? Equinemius St. Brown, Marquez Valdez
It sounds like
Scantling
a
had
horse.
had 100 yards in the game the other day. They spent 3 picks on receivers. A couple of these guys will end up on the practice squad. But basically, I would read up guys if on these receivers, decide which one you like the best, and just take one of them. Take your shot. You want one of these guys will be good this season. I
Yeah,
don't know who.
they always rank wide receivers that put out points. We'll see who it is.
Yeah, and it's wild. There's a million receivers, and it might be 3 guys that catch um 30 passes each, and then we just look stupid for having this conversation for so long. Mason Crosby's still their kicker, and he's still good.
Thank you, Doug.
Minnesota has Kirk Cousins is one of the biggest storylines, and Trevor Siemian is their backup quarterback. And I actually think if he has to play for a couple of games, I don't think it really affects the value of these other guys too much. I think Trevor Siemian is a decent backup quarterback in the NFL. Kirk Cousins is owned, and I think he's better than Case Keenum. So in theory, this offense should be better than it was last year. What are your thoughts on that, Connor?
I think it should be better. I think it also was a crazy season last year that may not be replicated. But all the pieces that were there are still there. And, I think with a healthy Dalvin Cook, this is going to be an exciting team.
For sure. Latavius Murray also great backup. This team is stacked just like from top to bottom.
Yeah, it is.
Latavius Murray, they should just trade Latavius Murray to the Redskins so he can be the best running back on the team.
One concern is that the head coach is a defensive-minded coach, which is good because their defense can be good again. But they do have pretty much an all-new offensive staff. So can they replicate what that staff had done before? That's my one concern. But I think with the talent they have to be really bad at their jobs to screw it up too much.
Well, their offensive coordinator is John DeFilippo, came over from the Eagles. So if they implement some of that, if they implement some of that stuff, I think Kirk Cousins will be great for fantasy. Good news for Nate there. Kyle Rudolph is going to be a good tight end, like he always is. He'll catch however many passes it takes him to get to 600 yards and 7 touchdowns. So he'll be good. You don't want any of these other guys at tight end. Wide receiver is interesting. And Stephon Diggs, they're both owned. They're both going to be great. And I saw Stephon Diggs just got a big new contract, and people were saying that like he doesn't deserve that. And I wonder if those people ever actually watched football. You watch Stephon Diggs play, and it's like, yeah, he's never had a 1,000-yard season, but you know who has had a 1,000-yard season is Jordan Matthews. If you think Jordan Matthews is better than Stephon Diggs, I have no words for you.
Diggs is kind of similar to Keenan Allen, where if he doesn't get hurt, he
Mhm.
could put out a crazy good season, and I think it's a matter of time until he finally does that.
Yeah,
And I
he's
hope he
a
does.
big fan of. He's a favorite of Matt Harmon over at Reception Perception.
Mm-hmm.
His contested balls, his tight window
He
throws are all great.
he has the stuff to be an all-star for sure.
Absolutely. The rest of these guys, Laquan Treadwell, Kendall Wright. Do we like any of these other guys? Kendall Wright could have a little
Kendall Wright's a fine possession guy.
better NFL
Treadwell,
receiver
I
than
think Treadwell has proven that he's not going to do much apparently, which is unfortunate, but it happens. So yeah, I think Wright pretty much will have that third wide receiver spot filled in. Maybe they'll give Treadwell another chance, but I don't see either of those guys being something worth drafting. Maybe one of them will be a waiver pickup at some point during the season, but I think it's Thielen and Diggs command that offense. They're going to get every opportunity to, and then you have Rudolph spelling it.
I'm actually projecting Laquan Treadwell for 400 catches and 4,000 yards because he went from one catch to 20 catches, and so obviously he multiplies his catches by 20 every season.
Oh boy.
So Laquan Treadwell, first overall pick. No, but in reality, he added 19 catches to his total, and if he gets 40 catches this year, sounds about right. And maybe it's out a little bit of a role on the team. That's I think the best case scenario for him. Nobody else, right?
Yeah, I don't see anybody standing out.
Kai Forbath is their kicker. They drafted a rookie, Daniel Carlson. It should be good offense. So if you don't get the kicker you want, I guess the Vikings kicker will do you just fine. And obviously their DST will be great as well. All right, that will do it for the NFC North. Let's get ourselves down to the NFC West, the Arizona Football Cardinals. Sam Bradford comes over in free agency. They also draft Josh Rosen with the 10th pick of the draft, and they bring in Mike Glennon. Mike Glennon cannot catch a break, man. That dude is just screwed over and over and over again. Of course, he did get paid like $18 million last year to suck. So there was that.
He gets paid that as the third on the depth chart. It's not even
Yeah,
the
right.
backup.
So Sam Bradford, Josh Rosen. How do you see this breaking down, and what is each of their fantasy value independently?
The biggest downer for Rosen is if Sam Bradford were to potentially have a injury-free season, I could see Bradford playing the entire season. I do think injury will be a big reason why Rosen steps in. I think he may be deserving of the starting role right away. I don't think he should. I think it'd probably be better to sit behind him a couple weeks. But I think he is also one of the most pro-ready of the quarterbacks to come out of this year's draft. I do think Sam Bradford will get hurt, though, so I'm not really that concerned about him not getting playing time. So I think Rosen will come in probably by week 4. Or if they really like him, they'll throw him in sooner and just have him surpass Bradford on his own, or Bradford could be terrible. But I think either way, they'll both be serviceable quarterbacks. If you're talking about wide receivers or how the run game will go, I think both of them will do a good job, and you won't have to worry if you're not concerned with the quarterbacks, just that they do their job. I think both of them are totally capable.
Yeah, I agree. I think and the quarterback situation, I think, is one of those times where it does not matter for the receivers and tight ends and stuff. It's gonna be steady Eddie as far as that goes. I mean, as far as for the Cardinals as a team, it might change a little bit, but other than that, where are you drafting Sam Bradford?
I would say he's very interesting. You could say he's a better value than Keenum. With the line, the line. The line is the secret. I think the line is going to hurt him. He's going to get hurt. So I think you have to anticipate him almost in the same way as a Fitzgerald to me, because I think he will get hurt. That line is not going to protect him. He's going to go down like a sack of potatoes at some point during the season. So I think he's definitely somebody you're looking at round 8 to 10. But he could potentially be a steal if he were to play the whole season. You know, he's always in some way.
My prediction on where Sam Bradford is going to go in the draft is he will go to the team that was waiting on Case Keenum to come back around to them, and then he gets picked. And so Sam Bradford will go a few picks later, And I think that's about right. I think Sam Bradford's a better player than Case Keenum. I just think Case Keenum probably starts more games this season than Sam Bradford. By what holiday do you see Josh Rosen starting?
Halloween. I think
Halloween?
Bradford will go down.
Okay, I'm going to say Indigenous Peoples Day, like Columbus Day, like early October. I think Bradford will go down sooner. I also don't think the Cardinals are going to be very good, so I think that'll factor in.
Yeah.
Who's the handcuff to David Johnson?
Oof. Chase Edmonds.
Or is he not even on the team?
That could be the case, but I do like Edmonds. I think he's an interesting rookie. But like I said, we haven't seen anything from him, and he's probably not going to. If David Johnson goes down week 1, they're signing someone. That's the way I see it.
Adrian Peterson, maybe.
Peterson again, But I think Chase Edmonds is an interesting player for the future. If David
Division
Johnson
2 guy is the only thing.
If David Johnson doesn't get a deal done, Chase Edmonds could be a guy that could potentially be a dynasty keeper to hold on to. Maybe they'll go with him next season. I think he's an interesting rookie.
Yeah, the book on him is he's a 4.55 guy, so he's fast enough to play running back in the NFL. 3-time Division II All-American. Played kind of in an RPO offense in college, which is apparently a little bit more pro style than we would have thought a couple years ago. Had over 900 receiving yards in his career at Fordham University. He can do some stuff, man. But that said, he played at Fordham, and if something happens to Johnson, they will sign somebody, and Chase Edmonds will get some run, but it'll probably mostly be like Adrian Peterson doing most of the heavy lifting.
But let's stop talking like that because David Johnson's going to play the whole season and be fantastic.
Last 2 times we've seen David Johnson on an NFL football field, he has gotten hurt. Just if anyone's keeping score at home.
Boo.
So something to be considered. Which was a knock on him coming out. Of course, he broke his wrist last year, so I guess that's not exactly a injury you're worried about.
I think if they were competitive, he would have played by the end of the year for sure.
Yeah, I think he's healthy now, and that's all we can hope for. And if it had been another knee injury, I'd be a lot concerned, but it wasn't. So the tight end position is basically Ricky Seals-Jones, and that's it. And he's very, very scary. Really, he could be terrible. We've never seen him we've never seen him with any of these quarterbacks before. But he is a talented guy. Played wide receiver in college. What's your thoughts on Ricky Seals-Jones this year?
I think if he were to fall low enough, he'd be a good value.
I think he's going to get overdrafted, though.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think there's going to be a tight end run, and he's going to get swamped in with that. But I think if the value is right, he's totally a nice play, especially with how bad this team is this season. He's going to be out on the field a lot, and he can't really – like you said, he was a converted wide receiver, so he's going to be catching passes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's definitely your move tight end. He's not an inline blocker type.
Yeah.
The wide receivers here, there's Larry Fitzgerald. He is available. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on him. But basically, Fitzgerald, if you don't get A.J. Green towards the top of the draft, Larry Fitzgerald will give you most of his production anyway. Chad Williams, I guess, has looked really great in camp. Bryce Butler, I always liked him. Being a Cowboys fan, I always liked when he was on the field. He always made plays, but he's a red zone kind of guy pretty much, and deep down the field. J.J. Nelson is really fast, but I think we've seen enough from him to know that he's probably not going to be much of a factor. And then obviously Christian Kirk was a great receiver. I think he's a really good dynasty pick in the later rounds. How do you see this receiving core shaking?
Fitzgerald, that's the issue. He's a Fitzgerald player, which is great that he's going to learn from the GOAT. But I just don't see him having a great season this year. I think he could definitely stand out a little bit, but I don't see him blowing anybody away this season with Fitzgerald there. But like I said, dynasty-wise, you've got a guy getting whispered into the ear by Larry Fitzgerald on a daily basis, and he plays just like him. So that sounds pretty fantastic to me in the future. I've heard Greg Little is like the little engine that could right now. He's trying to make his comeback in the NFL.
I did not know
So
Greg Little was still around. I will be completely
yeah,
transparent about that.
uh, Arizona brought him on because they saw a YouTube video or something of him from his iPhone of him running routes, and apparently he's just like going balls to the wall and trying to make the roster. Will he? I don't know. It's kind of really not important to bring up whatsoever because he won't have an impact, I don't think. But it'd be nice to see him at least make a roster.
Yeah, maybe play some special teams, catch a couple passes,
Yeah.
but only basically it's kind of the situation we were talking about earlier with Kenny Galladay. He's basically the same type of player as Bryce Butler, and Bryce Butler's better than him right now, and that's
Yeah.
that's that. Any of these other receivers do anything for you on this team?
I'd say no. I think
Yeah,
it's already crowded enough.
yeah, I mean, if you want to take a flyer on Chad Williams, do it in waivers. You don't need to draft him.
Yeah.
But Christian Kirk, I think, is one of those guys. If you spend like a 15th, 16th round pick on him this year, you're going to love having him as a keeper next year.
Yep.
So you probably have to draft him a couple rounds before that, maybe like 12, 13ish. But he's a good talented player. I don't think he's going to have any opportunity this year. To your point, Connor.
Yeah, with Larry.
Yeah, with Larry there. Phil Dawson's their kicker, and he's pretty good.
Where are the questions, guys? Who's watching?
Yeah, seriously, where are the questions? We got people watching. The Los Angeles Rams. Big surprise in last year's draft, or excuse me, in last year's season with Sean McVay, who's probably the best offensive line in the NFL right now. Forward. That said, if something happens to him, now before they said they liked Sean Mannion, but Sean Mannion has been horrible in preseason and horrible in camp. I would be very, very cautious if something happens to Goff. But Todd Gurley is, a top 4 running back at worst, probably top 2 or top 1. They have a lot of guys after him. Is there a handcuff here, or do you think they go to a committee if something happens to Gurley?
John Kelly.
John Kelly's the guy.
Absolutely.
Tennessee.
It's a shame that he went to the Rams. I think he could have been a really, really sneaky pick for kind of under the radar running back. Unfortunately, he ended up behind, like you said, arguably the top 2 in the league. But if anything happened to Gurley, I would be grabbing John Kelly in a heartbeat.
And really not. I think he kind of tumbled down draft boards because he didn't run the greatest 40. Mm-hmm. But he's kind of been a little snake bitten in his life. In college, he played with Alvin Kamara, who took a lot of his shine off of him, and then now in the NFL, he's behind Todd Gurley. But yeah, I mean, if you're Joe who owns Todd Gurley, are you not drafting? Are you not drafting John Kelly but rostering him? Is that kind of how you diagnose that?
Come again?
If you're Joe, are you rostering John Kelly but not drafting him?
I would say I wouldn't worry about it. Gurley doesn't seem like somebody's going to go down to me. But if he were to go down, I would have the mindset to go and want to grab Kelly immediately if I was Joe.
Okay. Good to know there. Steve asked, is Brandon Cooks a number 1 fantasy wide receiver? I'm going to say no, in the sense that, is he going to be in the top 14? And I personally see that. I think he'll be a good fantasy wide receiver. I think he'll be a good wide receiver too, but there's a lot of mouths to feed on this offense. I don't see him just catching enough balls or catching enough touchdowns to.
I agree. I think he'll definitely be a wide receiver too, at least. But with Robert Woods there, he's shown that he and Goff are, like a dream combo. And then Kupp there as that, nonstop PPR stud. Those balls are going to be going elsewhere. And I think Cooks is very dependent on a lot of catches to really shore up his fantasy numbers.
Yeah, he's currently being drafted as the 19th receiver off the board in Fantasy Pros ADP is Brandon Cooks. And even that seems a little high to me. Mm-hmm. I think Brandon Cooks, you haven't kept in the 4th round, Steve, so it's a good keeper. But if Brandon Cooks were in this draft and we're doing a redraft, I think he'd probably go 3 or 4 rounds ahead of Golden Tate. I think Golden Tate will give you like the same numbers, frankly.
Yep.
But Golden Tate's not sexy to anybody to pick. So people like Brandon Cooks because he runs mile. And there's a reason, by the way, he's on his third team in 3 years. Not for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. These other Rams wide receivers, Cooper Kupp, I guess, is just shredding people at camp. Do we think he'll be a little bit better than what he was last year? That'll basically be his ceiling, or what's the scoop with Cooper Kupp?
Well, I think what we talked about with Cooks about the style of player is, I think it does hurt Kupp more than Woods to me, but I think it's only going to get better for him, and I think he's already capped, right? Nate has him.
Yeah, he's in like round like 13 or something like that with
yeah,
AJ.
I think that's a great keeper. He's not going to blow your socks off, but he's going to be a really capable wide receiver that's going to get you 10 points easy on a given week. And it's just a really nice commodity to have as like a wide receiver 3 with wide receiver 2 upside on certain weeks.
For sure. Robert Woods had a breakout season last year, leading the Rams in receiving. Is Robert Woods was that an anomaly? I mean, we saw him; he was a really good player at USC in college before going to Buffalo and basically playing in a kind of a weird sort of Tyrod Taylor offense. And then he steps into Sean McVay's offense and becomes a great player. Do we see Robert Woods kind of reprising his role, or is he going to kind of fall more into that Sammy Watkins role from last season?
I don't know that he'll do what he did last. I mean, he was having back-to-back 100-yard games. I don't know if we're going to see that from him again necessarily, but I think the chemistry with Goff is there enough where I would potentially say another detriment to Cooks is Woods, in a way, is the wide receiver 1 on that team to me. Sammy Watkins was not the one last season.
Nope.
And I don't think Cooks will be this year either. I think Woods will be the number 1 wide receiver on this team.
Yeah, I think Robert Woods.
All those big-time games is a different story.
I think Robert Woods will end up being one of the best values in our draft just because, who's gonna like go just take Robert Woods, And I think he'll slip in the draft, and I think he'll easily outperform that draft position. Farrah Cooper, Josh Reynolds, or is it too crowded for any of these guys to have much of an?
I think it's set. There's nobody else can squeak in here. I think it's locked up.
If there's an injury, Josh Reynolds did flash a little bit last year, but do not draft him unless you're a glutton for punishment. Tyler Higbee, Gerald Everett, both tight end 2s.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar situation to Houston. They're just going to kind of get in each other's way, and you're going to have to play the hot hand, or maybe not even at all.
Yeah, that's it's a little bit of a shame there because I think independently both those guys are decent players.
Yeah.
San Francisco is one of the most talked about offenses this year, and I was talking to Steve yesterday because he was talking about that Matt Breida injury, separated his shoulder, as did tight end George Kittle. He was talking about it, and it's one of those. I think the Niners will be a decent offense this year, but everyone's saying that like every single player on this offense is going to be great, and there's just almost no way that that's true, right? Jimmy Garoppolo has played 7 NFL games. Yes, he's won all of them, but last year he threw 7 touchdowns against 5 interceptions. Okay, he's not Tom Brady out there just yet. Let's calm down. That's kept in the 18th round by Tim. That's pretty great. But this running back group is pretty interesting because obviously Kyle Shanahan is trying to do what he did with Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman. Now, Jerick McKinnon is he looks a lot different. He's built a lot different, but he is the exact height and weight of Devonta Freeman, which is surprising. I just think they carry it differently. But
yeah, so he's a lot lankier.
Jerick McKinnon, I thought he looked good in preseason. What do we think about this backfield? How do you think it's going to shake out?
Breida will be back by week 1, they're saying, so it's a scare, but I think he'll be okay. Same for their tight end, Kittle. He'll be back week 1. It's still not the best scenario. I think it's going to hurt Kittle's draft stock, but Breida and Kittle will be fine. McKinnon, I think I'm not on board as much as a lot of people are. I haven't seen it yet. I mean, he flashed with Minnesota, but he was also on probably one of the best offenses last year. So I'm curious to see if he lives up to expectations. I'm not quite sure he does, but either way, he's going to get the playing time and the carries that it's not going to matter. He's going to be a fantasy relevant running back, and he'll probably finish in the top 15. McNichols looked good in the first preseason game. I'm wondering if he's going to challenge Breda with him being out for that rest of the preseason for some playing time. But either way, I think it's probably going to end up being McKinnon and Breda kind of sharing a backfield, with McKinnon being probably about 80% and Breda being 20, I would say. 20 is not a small number, though. I think Breda will still get some good carries. And McNichols could maybe be a week one waiver pickup if Breda's not feeling 100%.
Yeah, they also have Raheem Mostert there, who is very fast, could make the team as a special teams guy, but I really don't see him having any fantasy relevance, without a bunch of injuries, and even then they'd probably just bring somebody in. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm trying to find the box for because Joe Williams played a lot in the preseason game and was not super effective. But do you want to tell us about these tight ends? Like, is it Kittle or bust?
I think Selleck is totally capable. He's getting up there in age, but I think Kittle should have a good season. The injury definitely hurts his draft stock, but in a way, maybe that'll get you some extra added value now with him falling. So I think he's kind of fallen back into what he was last year, kind of like a sleeper tight end. Can he show something? And it could really work out for you. Selleck could probably be a waiver wire addition, especially if Kittle is injury prone with the shoulder not healing the right way, or if he misses more games. I think Selleck is totally a candidate for some touchdowns this season. But overall, I think Kittle's the only one to own, obviously. I'm talking up Selleck, but Kittle's the guy to me.
Yeah, for sure. I think Kittle is I think Kittle's probably the guy to but how much does his injury affect his draft stock? I guess are you taking him where you would have taken him before? Or?
Well, I think it hurts his draft stock because it's right when we're drafting. He's not going to be healthy when we're drafting, and
you're not going to know.
People are not going to like that. It's going to be a huge question mark. But if he's ready to go week one, and you got him when he was supposed to go in our mock, I think he went in round 7 or 6 even, I think, which is a little high, but that's where he went. You could be getting him with this injury scare now. You could be getting him around 10, 11, 12, and that could really work out for you if he ends up hitting.
Interesting piece of trivia about Jeremy McNichols. He actually went to the same high school as my wife. So that's something to be known. I'll see if I can.
Not is the age close enough, or she knew him?
No. He would have graduated in 2012. So not.
We're so old.
We're so old. But she did graduate the same year as Klay Thompson from the Warriors.
Nice.
What is he doing? Stop it, Kevin.
He said, did she physically know him? I think he's what he
said. Not in the biblical sense. No, she did not. Thank you for asking that. That was very appropriate. Thank you, Kevin. At receiver though, Pierre Garçon, is he a progress stopper? Is he going to be good in his own right and good enough to keep some of these younger guys off the field? What's the scoop with Pierre Garçon?
I think he'll get his playing time, and I think he's going to get those PPR wise. He's a great ad. If it was standard league, it'd be a lot more trouble. But I think he's going to get. I would say I could see him still getting 60 catches this season with the upwards beyond that. I think he's going to. There's no way he's not going to start. I guess that's the simple answer. I think he's going to be the starter.
Yeah, it's one of the situations where it's just going to be hard for someone to take him off the field.
Yeah.
Marquise Goodwin was, he's one of the fastest humans on the planet. He's like an Olympic sprinter. The guy can run. Do we think he's going to be, a fantasy wide receiver 3? Like, where do you see him shaking out this year?
They're saying they want him to be their number one in San Francisco, is what they're
Well,
saying.
right, but for fantasy, I mean, is he going to?
Well, yeah, I know. But, so I think he's got really good chemistry with Garoppolo, and I think we're seeing another ex-Buffalo Bill that's actually really good, and just kind of shows you how terrible that offense has been these past couple of years. I think he's going to be very good. I think he's going to have moments where he can do wide receiver type numbers, and I think he'll finish in the low wide receiver 2, high wide receiver 3 range.
So based on that, where did you draft him?
Where I drafted him in our last mock, I believe.
So like 4th round, I think.
I think he went either 4th or 5th. I wouldn't hate that. I think it's a little high.
But if he's going to finish that high, I think you could probably take him higher than that, though, right? But I mean, there's a lot of volatility built into that, I understand, but
yeah,
it just seems a little.
It depends on how much you believe in the 49er offense as well. If you think Garoppolo is the savior, and if you think this offense is going to be on all cylinders. And then Trent Taylor there is a really nice PPR guy that nobody's really caught on to, I think, in our league from last year. I don't think
he's hurt though, so.
Oh, he's still hurt?
Yeah, he's practicing. He just didn't play in the preseason game, I think is how it went. Yes. On the scoring game from the other day for the Niners. Raheem Mostert, 8 for 57. Joe Williams, 3 for 27 and a touchdown. And then Jeremy McNichols, 3 for 15 and a touch. So they all kind of did their own things. Some bright spots, some not so bright spots there. Not really sure that any of those guys are going to be good unless Breida is not healthy. Dante Pettis was the 2nd-round receiver. Great athlete out there for the 49ers. But they were talking about Kendrick Bourne. He had a nice end of last season. What do you think about the rest of this group after Goodwin, Garcon, and Taylor, who probably will work out of the slot a lot just by virtue of his skill set?
Yeah. I think Pettis is definitely a name to watch. I heard Bolden Jr.'s got some good things going on. I'm not sure he'll make the roster, though. I think
he made a really stupid decision on a kick return in that game.
Yeah.
And so maybe not, but who knows? But go
on. But I think Pettis is mainly the guy to watch. I think those 3 are really set in stone: Garcon, Taylor, and Goodwin. I think Pettis is the only guy that's really going to kind of get into the swing of things with them, potentially. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a very sure lineup that's on a very unsure team. That they're not really mm-hmm. I don't think they really have an identity yet, but I think they have what they want to have happen lined up.
Yeah, he's a different style player, but Dante Pettis, you should draft in with the same kind of mentality that you're drafting Christian Kirk with, and that he might be that he'll probably be a good player, but not this year. I mean, something that was basically has to happen to Pierre Garcon. He's a very technically sound player. He's a great blocker. He's not the type of player you take off the field for a raw rookie. He's just not. Moving on past them, we'll take a trip down to, I believe, our last team of the show here as we approach the 2-hour mark once again. The Seattle Seahawks. I think this team's going to suck, personally.
Oh, yeah.
Russell Wilson is a top 5 quarterback, obviously. It's looking more and more like they missed on this Rashad Penny pick altogether. He's not better than Chris Carson. In college, they didn't ask Rashad Penny to catch a lot of passes. They didn't ask him to block all that much, and Chris Carson's better at things than him right now. And we said before, these passes, Carson hype real, and I think Rashad Penny now goes from, I think initially people had him in that conversation with Sony Michel and Jones and before he got hurt, Darius Geis, like that he was going to be like a starting running back that was a rookie. I think he's more in that Nick Chubb range now. I really do. Rashad Penny, I mean, he looks great. The numbers were really good. All the tape has been good, but he's just not catching on the way that they were hoping. And I think they overdrafted him. Everyone said that when they did it, and it's kind of playing out now. What are your thoughts on this Seattle running back situation?
I agree with you 100% on what you said about Penny there. And on top of that, and they still got Procise and McKissick there, and those guys I don't think are going to go away.
And Mike Davis too, who they seem to like.
I think I can see them keeping all of these guys because of Penny being so not ready, and it's going to be a mess. And they're so bad that I don't know that the running game's even going to have anywhere to start anyway. And that's where you might see McKissick and Procise come out more often because they're going to be throwing the ball 24/7. Their defense is not good anymore at all, and it's going to be a mess. And Penny needs to be on a team where they have a sure line that's going to be running down the clock because their defense is slowing. If Penny was on this team back when Marshawn Lynch was commanding things and they were winning Super Bowls, Penny would be a fantastic addition. The problem is they drafted Penny as if that they were still that team, and that's a huge concern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a really hard time. I mean, Rashad Penny, I think in our first mock, we had him going in the first round. He's not going in the first round, or he shouldn't anyway.
Yeah, in our league. He should. I think the second round this past mock, and I see him fall into the third now.
He could. I just think the running back's so scarce. I don't think he will.
It's so scarce he won't go too far more. But
yeah, and I hope I'm wrong. Rashad Penny is a guy, but I mean, Chris Carson, we've seen play good football before. Penny will be taken before Carson, and I don't think he should be. And so I think Chris Carson, if we were to do another mock, should be higher up in the mock for sure. Mm-hmm. After this, Nick Vannett has, I guess, looked pretty good in camp, but he's a waiver wire guy, right? We're not drafting him.
Yeah, I have to wait and see what happens here. I don't trust that any tight ends. I mean, he doesn't use tight ends at all anyway.
What do we think about this receiving core? Tyler Lockett, Doug Baldwin, Jerron Brown is like a decent, top three. They got Brandon Marshall there for whatever reason. Amara Darboh, who apparently is Amara Garbo, has not been looking great. Tanner McAvoy is there. He caught a couple touchdowns last year. What do we like here outside of Baldwin and to a lesser degree Lockett?
Well, I love Lockett this season, and especially with Baldwin. I mean, there is a potential that he doesn't make week one. I think Jaron Brown's a quality guy. I think he'll show some flashes. He's going to have to. Somebody's going to catch the ball. I think this is one of the examples of a messy wide receiver group that you want a piece of because it's going to be Russell Wilson, that one game he had against Houston all the time now, where he's just going to be throwing for 400 yards just to keep his team in it. And there's going to be people catching it. So I love Lockett. I love Baldwin. I love Brown. And if anybody else can stand out, they're going to be a hot waiver pickup, especially if Lockett, who is injury prone, goes down, or Brown in the same case. I think he's also slightly injury prone. I think this is a case of this team's really bad, so you got to get in on the wide receivers.
They're gonna put up some numbers eventually. But are we drafting any of these guys? Maybe a pick on John Brown other than that, no?
I would say you probably aren't going to draft any of these guys because Lockett's already owned and Baldwin's owned. I'd say I would draft those two, but Brown could be a good late flyer, I guess. I don't think you need to draft Jerron Brown though. I don't think. Yeah, you don't have. Yeah, you don't. But please please don't do it, Nate. I feel like Nate.
And they have Sebastian Janikowski as their kicker, who is last we saw was still pretty good. Guys, that is the end of the NFC preview. If there are any more questions, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, you guys went dead on us.
Yeah, seriously. They're still watching.
Just watching us talk about them not talking.
Yeah, right. Please make sure you guys are carpooling to the draft in 2 weeks. It is getting close here, guys. Connor, thanks for taking the time out. We'll probably do maybe one more podcast, which will be probably just a mock draft and covering some news. We'll do one more podcast before the draft if Connor can link up in time. Yes, Joe, we are doing another mock draft. There's your
he's saying right now. Are we doing one?
No, we're not.
We're up to what, like 5 hours almost combined for the first two podcasts?
Yeah, right. We're right at the 2 hour mark right now. So, but yeah, Joe, we will be doing a mock draft probably. I don't know, in about a week or so ish. I don't know. It's hard to say. But we will do one more mock before the actual draft. So if there's no other questions, Connor, thanks for joining us. I will release you, guys. Thanks so much for watching this edition of the Ultimate Man's League podcast. See you in 2 weeks.
Sup,